Hey everyone, Block here, and first of all I want to genuinely thank everyone for watching my channel and supporting my content and subscribing. I recently hit 1,000 subscribers and it was a milestone I didn't think I was actually going to hit, to be perfectly honest. I've been doing this for several years. I just didn't think I was going to hit that, but shocking to me, I did. I'm genuinely very thankful. It's very encouraging, and it's helping me continue to want to produce more content for everyone to share and talk about and enjoy. So thank you again very, very much. All of that's really thanks to one video, the 6 exclusive horror games on the Sega Dreamcast, and rightfully so. That's a really great video. I think it's one of my best. Audio quality could be better, but what can you do? I did that about 2 years ago. I put a ton of work into it. It's not the video I think I've put the most work into, but close to it. It required me to play 6 games to completion all the way through. Only 2 of those I had played before, the others I hadn't. It was a really great experience for me as a long-time, lifelong gamer, getting to play games I hadn't played before, but also sharing these kind of obscure titles with everyone else. So again, thank you very much for watching that, and stay tuned. There'll be more like that in the future that I plan to do. I've wanted to do something special for 1,000 subscribers. I didn't know exactly what to do, but I thought an Ask Me Anything, an AMA, would be a good way to do that, to formally introduce myself, let you get to know a little bit more about me. So the first question that I have is, what's the origin story of the name Block? You know, that started 19 years ago. It was my freshman year in college, the first week that I was in college, actually. We were doing introductions in my dormitory. Everyone on the floor was introducing themselves. We were going over everything, saying your name, where you're from, what you do, what you like, what's your major, and all of that. And it gets to me, and, you know, I say my name, I say where I'm from. I wasn't sure my major, but I was thinking history at the time. That's what I ended up doing. And, you know, everyone's just like, okay, whatever. And at the time, I had probably about 400 to 500 video games, physical copies. I didn't have them with me, but I had them. I owned them. Most of them were at home, but I had brought, you know, probably 50 to 100. I didn't know the size of my dorm, if I was going to have a roommate. I did for a few days, but I ended up not having a roommate for the remainder of the year. But I didn't want to bring everything because, you know, limited space. But I end up saying I have about 400, 500 video games, and someone was shocked and was like, "You're like a Blockbuster." And, you know, everyone laughed. 19 years ago, Blockbuster video was still a thing. People still rented movies. People still rented video games and went to this brick and mortar store to get these items and rent them for a few days and then return them, and that's kind of how I operated on campus. You know, people would come to me and ask me for game recommendations and ask to borrow games, and I ended up keeping a list, and I wasn't charging people for most of the time, but people would check out games and I'd rent them out, and I was like the campus's Blockbuster. That gets into the rest of the campus, though. It gets outside of my second floor dorm, to where people all over campus start calling me Blockbuster. And while I was definitely very interested in movies and pop culture and studied film, coming from a poverty background, I didn't own a ton of movies. I spent almost all of the money that I saved up from working and doing odd jobs and things on video games, and of course most of those 400 to 500 games I got very cheap. A lot of them were hand-me-downs and things like that, but people on campus started to think that I had every movie in the world. And I didn't. I only, at that time, only had a few dozen movies, DVDs with me. But I wanted to give people what they wanted. And, for the next year, I spent most of my money accumulating a very vast, dedicated, diverse film catalog library that rivaled what I had in video games. And so people would rent movies from me, and I got exposed to so many films that I wouldn't have normally watched. Got exposed to a lot of classic films that I was interested in but didn't have access to. Anyway, it came to define me, I believe. And going beyond that first year of college, I kept expanding my gaming library, my movie library, my movie and gaming knowledge. And so after I graduated, that persona, that nickname, persisted with me. Originally, I was going to name my channel something like The Game Yard. Thought it was kind of catchy, but it's also a little generic. And then just one day it hit me like, why not just name it Block's Gaming Reviews or Blockbuster's Gaming Reviews? And I found that Blockbuster was a little too long for most of the accounts and titles and things, so I just shortened it to Block. So the next question, why did you start your channel? I started it in around 2018. At least that's when I started buying equipment for my channel and planning what I wanted to do with my channel. It was a time that I was feeling pretty lonely, honestly. I wasn't able to talk about games with too many people. I really wanted to. My wife, though, doesn't really get into games. Most of my family doesn't really get into games. I have a lot of friends that play games, but they're not passionate about games. So I wanted to connect with the greater gaming community and share a lot about what I do, what I like, what I'm passionate about. I had a gaming blog where I did reviews for a very long time. I tried it on IGN and Destructoid and later on Tumblr, sharing gaming content and gaming stories and gaming reviews and gameplay and things like that, but it just wasn't connecting with a lot of people. So when 2018 rolls around, I'm feeling like I'm really wanting to connect with people, and I had a little bit of a film background. Again, I studied filmmaking to a small degree. I had experience in making small films in college. I had some familiarity with Adobe and filmmaking software, so I thought, well, why not? So again, in 2018, it was a weird time. I was getting tired of talking about politics and history and work and things like that, and I just wanted to share the things that I love and that I'm passionate about. And so I started making my channel. Originally, my first video was going to be on GTA 4 and all of its expansions and things like that, but the equipment that I had could not capture from a PlayStation 3. PlayStation 3s are kind of hard to capture by because they have some security things that prevent you from recording directly off the device through normal means. That didn't work out. Had conceived of doing the Trash or Treasure video series, and one of the first games that had stood out to me was doing The Blob. I'd never played The Blob, but I was interested in it, and I talked to a few people at work, and they had heard of it, but had never played it, and I thought that was a perfect candidate to start my channel with. So the next question, what is up with your accent? I get asked that a lot. I'm from southeastern Kentucky originally, but honestly, I don't really sound like I'm from southeastern Kentucky. A lot of people that I went to high school and middle school with and grew up around do not sound like me. Some people thought that I came from somewhere else, and I got picked on a little bit, especially early on in middle school when my voice changed. But, by high school, I think I learned to accept that my voice sounds a little bit different. Not terribly different, but a little bit different. It's unique. It adds character. A big part of it is that my parents didn't want me to have that kind of stereotypical Southern accent. They spoke a little proper. They definitely had an accent. The rest of my family definitely have an accent. But I was being raised by my grandparents, and my father/grandfather. He was a unique individual, and spoke a little more properly than typical. So I think I adapted a lot of that, along with some just natural intonations and my personality and all of that. I learned early on, though, that the way that I speak is unique and somewhat attractive to the ear, pleasing to the ear, as you will. It's a little bit of Hank Hill, a little bit of Mr. Rogers, a little bit Cleveland from Family Guy, a little bit of all of these very soothing voiced characters. And I'm proud of that. I like that part of me. There was a time I didn't, but I think I think it's one of my best qualities now. The next question: have you forgiven Seth Rollins for betraying the Shield and aligning himself with Triple H and the Authority? At the time that it happened, it's a very impactful and important part of wrestling history, of WWE history. And you don't want to see the face, the good guy, turn to the dark side. So that can be very devastating in the beginning. But, I think creatively, I think it's one of the most important decisions that WWE made at that time. I think if Seth Rollins doesn't do that, then you don't get Roman Reigns and you don't get Dean Ambrose being lifted up into the superstar status that they would eventually become. It lifts all of them up, all three of them up, into a very important position for the future of wrestling. And WWE was at a very strange time. Creatively they were hurting. A lot of fans were getting tired of the established players. You have Triple H and John Cena. You even have The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar that people were not warming up to as much as they would have just a few years prior. They wanted to see the new blood rise up, and I think they were getting stifled. And so you have to have this impactful emotional turn to rejuvenate everybody. And so with that in mind, I have forgiven Seth Rollins for turning on the Shield and aligning himself with Triple H and the Authority. Next question: who are your favorite content creators? One of the very first content creators in video games that I really started to love was the Angry Video Game Nerd. At that time was the Angry Nintendo Nerd. I think he set the groundwork for all future video game content creators on YouTube. You had gameplay, you had review, you had comedy skits, you had insightful analysis, and you had a character that you could do so much more than as your normal self. And I think a lot of content creators going forward would adapt a lot of that formula to make themselves successful. Some of my other favorite ones are German985. I don't watch him as much anymore because he mostly does streaming. I don't watch a lot of streaming. I don't have the time for that. I catch a lot of the clips, but I don't watch a lot of the live things. But I think he's just so creative and insightful and brilliant, and how he takes gaming content and makes it something very unique and original to himself. Same thing with Video Game Donkey. Again, extremely insightful. When he does a serious video, you have to stop and listen because you learn something, you take away something from that. But in those same comedy skits, though, you are getting these insightful comments, these insightful analysis of these games that you wouldn't normally have. Another one that I really admire is SNES Drunk. I wish I could do very short, concise videos like he does. A lot of his videos are under 5 minutes. Long videos are even less than 10 minutes usually. But again, extremely insightful. I love those content creators that can give me a new perspective and make me learn something about a game that I may have played a million times, or on a game that I've never heard of and never played, and taking away something from that. Another is LGR, Lazy Game Reviews. A lot of his content aren't reviews, but on PC gaming and computers and retro hardware. It's a realm of gaming that I don't have a ton of experience in. I didn't have a good PC setup growing up, and so I'm not involved in the PC gaming community as much as I am in console gaming. So learning from him is something that I truly appreciate and can take away from his videos. It's a slice of the gaming pizza that I don't normally have, but I think is very, very tasty. Content creators like Ink Ribbon and Odd Header, I think, do really wonderful Easter egg content and horror gaming content. That's another thing that I'm kind of passionate about and I really enjoy. Strangely, from the Seth Rollins question, I have been watching a lot of old wrestling content creators. I don't watch a lot of modern wrestling at all. Growing up through the 90s, I think everybody watched wrestling at some point. Everyone was involved in WCW and WWF, that rivalry. So the content creators, Wrestling with Regret and Wrestling Bios, I think, do wonderful analysis of these 90s wrestling and early 2000s wrestling, when I think everybody was glued to their TVs watching that. And then I would be amiss if I didn't mention the Boss Rush Network. It's a network that I've been connected with since 2021. They have wonderful podcasts. They have great articles and reviews and Boss Rush banters that they post every day on their website. And it's something that I'm proud to be a part of. I've met some very wonderful people through the Boss Rush Network, and so definitely check them out as well. There's a whole platform of podcasts and connected individuals that are part of that. So the final question, what are you working on for the future? There's a lot of content that I'm still really wanting to get to on my channel. Things that I haven't finished and things that I've had on my to-do list for a very long time. I'm really wanting to revisit my Final Fantasy Anthology series, where I'm examining each of the mainline Final Fantasy games in some excruciating detail and going over their history and gameplay changes and changes between the ports of those games. Looking at all the versions of Final Fantasy 1 and all the versions of Final Fantasy 2 and so forth. I'm wanting to rebrand that maybe as the history of Final Fantasy. I think just that title instead of Final Fantasy Anthology would excite more people. It never got the attention or the views that I really wanted. Those videos I've probably spent most of my time working on. I spent the most energy working on. So it was hard to justify spending that much energy on something that wasn't getting that much of a return. But I'd really, really love to get back to that. I recently have been finding a lot of success on TikTok, of all places, with creating shorts for my music and gaming. And video game music is something I'm extremely passionate about. And so sharing some wonderful songs on there and on YouTube in short form, I think is something that I'm really focused on doing right now. I'm also wanting to do more lists or videos that have multiple games, something similar to the 6 exclusive horror video games on the Sega Dreamcast. One that I have planned is 20 third-party games that made the PlayStation 1. Looking at each game for about 2 minutes, 1 minute, or nothing like a full review, but explaining why they're so important to the PlayStation 1 and building that brand and establishing it as probably the current most dominant gaming brand there is right now. Arguably PlayStation or Nintendo. But that'll do it for this Ask Me Anything. I really enjoyed getting to your questions. If you have anything that you would like me to answer that I didn't get to this time, go ahead and leave them down in the comments below. Maybe I can do that for my 2,000 subscriber celebration. Hopefully that won't take me another 7-8 years to get to. But thank you again so much for your support and checking out my channel and subscribing, and I really do appreciate it. Sincerely. Take care, everyone.